Here we go. Welcome to Double Dribble Bucks. I am Seth. With me, as always, is my good friend Brett. How you doing tonight, Brett?
I'm doing great, Seth. We finally got a big win, so it's a lot to celebrate tonight.
Yes, yeah. One win, finally. So we're in great spirits. Um, yeah, it hasn't been good. It definitely has been a hangover since that NBA Cup,
Yes.
which is unfortunate. 4-5 since the NBA Cup. Only two of the 9 games were against teams with a winning record. Cleveland and Indiana, barely. I don't. Maybe when we played them, I'm not even sure if had a winning record at that time.
hmm
So, yeah, not good. Maybe we can just kind of jump into that. Do you have any? What are some thoughts you have on this kind of downward spiral we've been in recently?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could be like a hangover effect, but Dame and Giannis both got sick, like the flu or whatever they got. And, I know like professional athletes know their body more than any other person in the world, but I know like when I'm sick and even like after, it's like tough to kind of get back into form, even just like mentally. So I can't imagine what these guys are feeling. And they're not going to put anybody out there if they're not up to it. But I'm sure that just having to rely on your body so much like the way they do has to change the way that they're playing. So I'm sure that's a huge part of it. I can't imagine that they truly had the like, oh, we finally did it. Now we can just kind of relax moment. I just don't buy that for a second. But I think there's something to be said to the other teams that want to step up and really take down somebody to like prove a point. We've talked about before, like some of these like really crappy teams will come out of the gate super strong because they're like, well, this is going to be like our big moment. This is going to be our championship because if we can take down a contender, then who cares what else? Like at the end of the year when we have 10 wins, we can say, yeah, but one of them was against the Bucks that won it all or something like that. So, I think at this point I'm just kind of writing it off as, that sickness really was kind of like a big thing for them. Especially when you finally got to see them come out and dominate the way they did tonight. I mean, or last night. And I guess it was the Raptors. So I'm not like throwing a parade for them, but still, I mean, that's nice to be able to see them just go out and just kind of dominate from the beginning.
Yeah, it was good that it wasn't close. We didn't have to come back from 19 down to get the victory or something like that, especially against the Toronto. It's like you just want to
Yeah.
take care of those teams. And Toronto looked pretty bad. Like we should win. But with the first time we played Brooklyn, we didn't have Dame or Giannis actually that game. But also Brooklyn did not. I think they had just made one of the trades. And then like Finney Smith, I think, was hurt or sick. And not Cam Johnson, the other Cam, whatever,
Yeah.
the guy who
Yeah.
scores all the time. I think he didn't play. So like Brooklyn had nobody playing. They only had Cam Johnson basically. And they looked so bad. That was the game. There were 43 turnovers total. Each team had over 20 turnovers. It was such a pathetic game. It's like, yeah, we don't have Dame or Giannis, but we do have Chris Middleton, and we are supposedly a pretty good team. And it was just sickening to lose that game, especially just watching that one. Especially, they looked so bad. Like the Nets looked so bad. I mean, the Bucks looked bad too. And the other losses to the Nets, both teams looked a little bit better. And maybe I'll dive into that. One of the things that I noticed, I was kind of going through who have we lost to? Is there some kind of through line with some of this? And if I looked at it correctly, the Bucks are 4-9 against teams that are in the top 5 of 3-point frequency. So basically, the teams that shoot the most threes are Chicago, Brooklyn, Charlotte, Boston, and I don't know, some team that we didn't play. I didn't write it down. But we played those four teams. We played Chicago, Brooklyn, Boston, Charlotte apparently 13 times. I mean, we are done playing Brooklyn. We lost 3-1 in the season series. And I think we're 2-2 with Chicago, so I think we played both those teams 4 times. Point is, we keep losing to these teams who shoot a ton of threes. And so does that make sense to you? Is that, when I say that, are you like, oh, that makes a ton of sense? Or is that kind of surprising? Or what do you take from that?
Well, first of all, I'm kind of surprised that those are the teams that are top 5.
Yes, I know.
I mean, that was the first thing. I mean, Boston, I was expecting or waiting for that one, but the other ones, are not the ones that I would have guessed if I had, I don't know, 10 minutes to throw guesses at you. I don't know that I would have thrown those out there, but I don't know. Some part of it is, teams are going to live and die by the 3. And if you chuck it up enough, like in theory, you're going to have them hit, which is why like the state of the NBA today is give up the easy layup to take the 3. Still kind of baffles me when you can get a guaranteed layup, essentially uncontested, and shoot it out for a 3 to get that extra 1 point. It's like, I don't know. I just have a hard time wrapping my head around it. But I mean, we don't have an identity that I can really kind of stick to, in the sense of like there are teams that have a strong, presence in the paint. Look at San Antonio with Wemby. I mean, they have to. Minnesota with Gobert, they have, big guys down there that they have to be able to incorporate in some capacity. These other teams have big guys, but that's not a huge part of their game at all. So, that's kind of where some of that's going to come from. And when you're shooting a lot of 3s, you tend to be a pretty athletic team. And so, the Bucks are older. That maybe is having some impact on them. It sucks that we have lost that many games because, at this point in time, you have to assume you're going to have to go through Boston to win a championship. And that's a problem. If you can't beat a shitty Brooklyn or shitty Chicago or shitty Charlotte team, how are you going to do against like a really good Boston team that can shoot the 3? And I don't know if I know the answer to that, to be honest, because, when I have glimpses of like our perimeter defense being better, it's still not great. I don't even know what's worse, our perimeter D or our transition D. And both of those are going to be killers if we can't figure it out. And we do have athletic guys, so I don't know. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I don't know the answer to it, but it's something that we got to figure out. I mean, Doc does seem to have talent to be able to fix the defense, and I'm hopeful for it. But this time of year, it's kind of sucks to have that stat in our column right now.
Yeah, and what's funny is I would think the same thing. I would think the problem there is defense. And I'm sure there is something connected with that. At the same time, in the past 9 games, since the NBA Cup, the Bucks have the 4th ranked defense per cleaning the glass, which might be a little different because they don't count like garbage time. Either way, top 5 defense in the past 9 games, and we're only 4-5. Like that in itself is kind of weird. You think if you were top 5 D, you're not going to go 4-5 just in any 9-game stretch, but especially against a bunch of bad teams. And a number of these teams are shooting all these 3s, which we seem to have a problem with. But apparently, the defense is good. So yeah, I agree. Like it's hard to pinpoint exactly what's going on. Now, I'd say maybe going back to the 3-point shooting and like our problem with guarding it, I would say Brook Lopez is not going to be able to go to the perimeter and guard those 3s very well. And some of these teams, their center takes it like Clowney on the Nets, takes a ton of 3s, which is surprising to me. Like I didn't realize that. But he made a lot, I think the previous game. So that would be one thing that comes to my mind is like Lopez shouldn't play. I looked that up. He was playing an average of 32 minutes per game in those 13 games against these high 3-point shooting teams. That seems like too much. It seems like those would be the games that Lopez is going to play a little bit less. Him and Bobby both, they're playing 59 minutes a game between the two of them. And so this goes back to another thing that I'm going to keep talking about all season. Why are there not more Giannis and 4 wings, basically small ball with Giannis at the 5? Like, why is that not happening? And these are the games, especially if you're thinking about like Boston, it's just so obvious, why is that not happening? And if you're saving it for the playoffs, I don't get that. That seems dumb. Like, why, I'm just going to lose games in the meantime. Like, I don't really buy that. Like, basically, I'm just thinking they're not going to do it, and I'm worried about it. So hopefully at some point he gets it. But those are the things that I kind of point to, kind of think about. But at the same time, our defense has been really good, so it is kind of a weird thing.
It's surprising, and sometimes like defensive stats are weird to kind of understand because, it's the sniff test or the sight test or whatever, where you're watching and being like, you can tell me all day that we have a top 5 defense, but I'm watching this game and there's like, what are you talking about? Like, our defense is better, but top 5, like, come on, get out of here. But, like we've talked about before, like Brook fits against certain teams very well. And these other teams, it's like, I don't understand what's happening. And I agree with you completely. Like, this whole idea of like, well, in the playoffs, we'll do something different. If you're a coach that's going to be like, I'm so confident that my team is going to be amazing with this style that I'm not even going to unleash it for anybody to see. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. That's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, you have to make sure it's going to work. So, I don't know. And, the thing that's interesting too is, kind of along the same idea is we talk about how Brook is such a great defender in the paint, and he is, and, he has a number of blocks a game. He's doing really well. The thing I've noticed about this 9-game stretch, especially when we have some of these younger teams, we're just getting destroyed on alley-oops. And when I look at a team that's doing alley-oop after alley-oop, I look at it as they have zero fear of our paint presence, which is what really bothers me, because it's like Brook is there. And these guards are just like, yeah, I'll just toss it up. I guarantee we're going to catch it and just, dunk it down. And it works like a decent number of times. I mean, I'm sure there's some stat that it's probably only working 20%, but when I'm watching these games, it's like, yeah, every game someone is going to do an alley-oop dunk over Brook, and it's going to be like clockwork. And I don't understand how that's happening. Maybe I'm just too dumb, but what I'm watching doesn't add up to some of the stats.
Yeah, and with Brook, it seems like he'll have a half here or there, or a stretch of playing where he's great, he's awesome, he's getting all these blocks, he's really a huge presence in the paint. And then there's other times where they're getting alley-oops, they're shooting it right over him, and it seems like he's kind of a half step too late, and it's not working. And I don't know what the difference is, because there's been games where it was like first half Brook is a problem, second half he's awesome. And it's like, it's the same team, it's the same matchup. Like, what changed here with Brook? I don't know, because he's playing the same drop coverage. It's not like things really changed, other than he played better. He got to the spot sooner than he did in the first half or whatever. So, I think a lot of that's just he's getting old and he is slower. And maybe, I think sometimes he can kind of get it together and just kind of be feeling it in the zone, and just better at playing basketball at times. And I think he's going to have more stretches of not being good at basketball, basically. And the older you get, that's probably the case, right? So I think that would be my guess as to why that's happening. But I agree with you. There are times where Brook's playing and it seems like they're getting what they want in the paint. And it's like, well, what's the point of Brook being out there if this is what's happening?
Yeah, if you're just going to have free will over just kind of having dunks on left and right, take him out of the game and try something different at that point. But it's, the same thing is, along this, like, what we're watching versus what the stats are saying. I'm seeing too many times, and I definitely watch more Bucks games than just overall NBA games, so it could be an NBA problem versus just a Bucks problem. But there are moments where I'm watching the defense, and it looks like a grade school team out there, in the sense that, like, you'll have a guy who's wide open for a 3, someone near him, and instead of going to defend him, they back away to their guy, leaving the most wide open shot you've ever seen. And it's like, hold on. You're getting paid a lot of money as a professional ball player. Like, I understand if you go and try to defend that guy, then the guy you're supposed to have is just going to be open as well. But when you, like, actively step away, you've made it even more open. And I just, it's another thing. It's like, I can't understand the mentality there. And, let's talk about Brook. Like, Brook, I'm not going to blame him for those. He is older. He's a huge dude. He's not fast. He's not going to, like, kill his body to try to, like, get that extra step, and it take all of his energy to do it. But when you have younger guys out there that just, it looks foolish. And I just don't understand that either. I don't know if you've been seeing the same thing, or if it's, if you're seeing it outside of the Bucks as well. But that's another one that's kind of hard to wrap my head around.
I've noticed it a few times with AJ Green specifically, who is a younger player and still learning some of that stuff. You'd expect maybe more mistakes from a guy. What, second year or third year? AJ Green.
I think it's third year.
Okay, I think so too. Probably didn't really play his first season, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't.
Anyhow, I have noticed it with him where he'll misread who, if he switched, or should they switch, should they not switch. He does or he doesn't, and there's miscommunication, or they both go to the same guy, and it seems like that's happened with Green a few times, where I'm guessing it's kind of his fault. The most egregious is when they both, and I think it was Green's fault, both of the guys went to Ben Simmons at the 3-point line as if that's a threat, and then right. Simmons threw it past it to a wide open, I don't know, someone who can shoot
literally
threes.
Anybody else.
and he nailed it, and this was like that, the 10, 20 seconds left in the game. Maybe this was that horrible game. It was obviously one of the two Nets games that we recently played. So, yeah, a couple of moments I can think of with Green kind of misreading it and misplaying it, and hopefully he gets better over time. And overall, I think Green is a really pretty solid, solid defender. But yeah, that's happening sometimes, and at that time it was a pretty crucial point in the game, and yeah, you can't have that.
Yeah, I mean those are the types of things that you got to have one of these coaches on the bench being like, all right, here's what we have to do in those situations, and if it's a busted play, like there's got to be some analytic person that's like, all right, well, we have a better chance of, guarding the guy with the ball and swing it and making him swing it over, and hopefully buy enough time to get somebody to kind of come over. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But that's just one thing that just keeps standing out to me is like, I don't know. It's very hard to watch.
Yeah, I like how Doc kind of called out AJ Green, but kind of not. And this will happen sometimes where the reporter will ask him about the play, and so Doc will say like, on that play that the guy wasn't supposed to go to. We talked about not going to the to guard Ben Simmons on the perimeter, and so the guy shouldn't have done that. Referring to like AJ Green, but like not saying AJ Green. It's like, I like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, anything else? I can move on to a couple things, but did you have anything else that stood out to you this stretch?
Not really. I think it's look, we've talked before. I love Bobby Portis. I don't understand the mentality sometimes of Dame giving up a shot in favor of Bobby. That's happened a couple of these games too, where
yes. Yeah.
I just don't understand it. It's the same type of like, if Ben Simmons was on the Bucks and Dame's giving it to Ben Simmons, like that's obviously not fair to Bobby. Bobby's a great scorer, but like, man, I want Dame taking that shot 9 times out of 10, and he's just facilitating it to somebody else, and it's like, this is why you should be here taking that shot, demanding that shot. And I don't know if it's a game plan to be like, all right, well, everyone's going to assume Dame's taking the shot, that's why we're not going to have him take it. But I don't know, if you're going to be one of the top 75 players of all time, you have to have that mentality of, I know I can make it, I'm the better shooter, like give me the ball and let me try it. I don't know. Did you notice the same thing?
Oh, they definitely do that, where they like make a point. It just seems very clear, like they are saying to themselves, like, we're gonna give it to Bobby, and Bobby's gonna shoot on this possession, no matter what. Right. You know what I mean? And it's like, why are you forcing it? Like, I'm fine beginning of the possession, do a post up with Bobby, see if he can, assuming he has like a decent matchup, and it's like, all right, let's attack that matchup, see what happens. Okay, but if he doesn't have it and he kicks it back out, like, do something else. Don't force the issue. And there are times where Dame it seems like he's very purposefully like not being aggressive on that and like getting it back to Bobby, like, Bobby, you shoot on this possession. And it does seem to happen like once or twice a game. And Bobby gets enough shots where you wouldn't think, we need to get it to Bobby to make him feel like he's part of the team, or, I wouldn't think that we would need to do that. He gets enough shots. He's on that second unit. The ball moves around enough, but they seem to be doing that. And I don't really get it. And like, those are just, they totally bog down the offense. It's just not natural. like you and I are seeing it. Like, what's going on here? It's not a natural basketball. I don't know why they're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, we have no problem with Bobby shooting the ball, and he can get hot, and he is a smart player. He knows when he's got a good matchup. I mean, there's times where he calls back for the ball, and it's like, yeah, I can hit a mid-range over this guy all day, and he does. But I don't know if I'm picking like 4 guys on the Bucks that it's like I'm giving you the final shot. I don't know that Bobby's in my top 4, and it seems like he's the top 1. Like I don't know. Like if we're playing San Antonio and it comes down to a last shot possession at any point in the game, end of the quarter, end of the half, I don't care, and they go to Bobby again, I'm really going to start to kind of lose my mind, because it's not that you're worried, but it just doesn't make any sense that you have all these guys on there and Bobby's the one that you picked. I don't know.
Yeah, but maybe this will lead into the starting lineup conversation, and there's been talk. Some Bucks fans, at least on Twitter, are talking about benching Chris. Not benching Chris, but bringing Chris off the bench. I'm sure some of them are negative on Middleton, but I think part of the aspect is, let's get a scorer like Middleton off the bench. And for whatever reason, it hasn't been working with the 3 of them, Middleton, Dame, and Giannis, on the court at the same time this season. I mean, it doesn't make sense, because last year they were plus 16.3. And this year so far, they're negative 6.8. And so it's like, why is that? The only difference is Beasley was the starter last year.
Yeah.
And this year it's Ajax for the most part. And so we can talk about the Portis part of it too, but maybe we'll start with the Ajax part of it. And so people are talking about, one thing with the starting lineup is put in AJ Green instead of Ajax. And it's because the offense has sucked. I told you we were 4th in the past 9 games. On defense, we were ranked 21st on offense. So, yeah, for whatever reason, the offense has been terrible, while last year it was great all season. And so maybe we need that shooter to space the floor more, AJ Green instead of Beasley, similar kind of a player in terms of high frequency and high percentage 3-point shooting. But then we're going to lose the defense of Ajax. So maybe we'll sit there for a second. My quick thought on that is I like Ajax starting because he's then on the starting guard, like the really prominent guard of the opposing team. And like that's the best benefit from Ajax, is to hound the Jalen Brunsons and the Trae Youngs and those types of players. And so if we're going to bring Ajax in the second unit, it's like we're not really lining up with the best player on the other team, and it seems like you're kind of limiting what Ajax, like what he brings to the table. And so that's why I'm hesitant. But perhaps you start both of them and bring Middleton off the bench. What do you think?
Well, number one, I'm interested to know how critical NBA starting roles are to these guys. Does it impact their contract? Does it impact certain things? I don't know. I don't dive into that stuff. But, Bobby doesn't need to be a starter. He is a great 6th man. He loves the role. He brings a lot of energy off the bench. There are guys that are needed for that type of thing. And I think, going to the Ajax side of it, I agree completely. I love him starting because, I think we're on the same page where it's like he is best just at worst annoying their best guard. At worst. Like he gets in foul trouble, and that's when kind of Doc starts to not understand how to use him anymore, and it frustrates him. But yeah, get him out there early, get him in the guy's face, get him to get off his rhythm. The last thing you want to do is get someone like Brunson to come out and score 6 quick points, and then he's feeling hot and the game's a certain way. I don't know if the answer is AJ Green. Not saying it's not, but part of me is kind of like, all right, well, if you have Dame and Giannis and Lopez as like, let's just say your big 3 starting, and then when they sit in whatever order they do, you have Bobby, Chris, and Green coming in. Like, you're not missing any scoring. I mean, you are. It's you don't want to compare losing Giannis and Dame to those other guys. But like here comes like three great scorers again, which is a huge thing that like teams like the Pacers have historically done against us. Like, you know, how many Pacers games are you watching where it's like, oh, the Pacers have 40 bench points, you know, compared to the Bucks 5 or something like that. So there is something to that. And if Chris is fine coming off, like that would be potentially a great role. And then as the game progresses, like as you're in the game, it doesn't matter who started and who didn't, because you get to the fourth quarter and you can have all the best, whoever's having the best games out there at the same time. So, I mean, whether going back to your question, do we start AJ Green? I'm fine with it, getting some scoring in there. I'm also, you know, as bad as you're gonna make fun of me, I'm okay if Prince is the other starter, because he does have that great 3-point percentage. He is a scorer. His defense is better than Green's at this point, I think. So you could kind of interchange either one of those, and hopefully have some success. I'd rather, I guess, have Green later in the game for his scoring than Prince, which maybe if you follow the same model of Prince and Ajax starting, potentially getting in foul trouble early, like, okay, like I can live with that. That's fine with me, because I would rather have these other guys coming in later. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. Yep. I got a couple stats here. On Prince, I think he's not a good defender, I guess. I think, actually, I wouldn't say that. I don't think Prince is a good perimeter defender. I see guys going around him all the time. Yeah. And so that's why I don't like him in the 1-2-3 position. He should be a 4, and if he's guarding a bigger guy, he's not having to be quick on his feet and keep the guy in front of him as much. And I think he's better with that kind of defense. Kind of plays a little bit bigger than he actually is. And he's pretty good at rebounder too. So, yeah, to me, Prince is an awesome 4. If you ever play a Giannis at the 5 lineup, that's great. But as it is now, I'm not a big Prince guy. But in terms of starting lineup, so one reason you might want Chris off the bench is to lead that second unit, which you were kind of talking about. And so one reason that I kind of like that is maybe that means a little bit less Portis. I mean, it probably doesn't, because really the only reason you have less Portis is if you're playing no Brook and then no Portis. Like, you know, if there are ever times that's happening. And so I guess that's really the only way to get no Portis. But if Chris is coming off the bench, he's kind of the main scorer off the bench. So he's kind of taking that Bobby Portis role away a little bit, which maybe is a big problem. Now Bobby's upset and not playing as well because he's kind of awkward. He's like, well, what's my role? So I think it is pretty tricky, especially with veterans who've been doing this for a long time and they've had the same role for a long time. I mean, if you're going to ask Middleton to like come off the bench like all season, that, you know, is he going to be okay with that? And then you're asking Portis to like lose his 6-man spot. So there's a lot there, that's for sure, just in terms of personalities. In addition to just like how that affects their play, I would say. But so I'm not sure I'm on board with it, but a lot of people are saying this. A lot of people are kind of proposing Middleton off the bench. The thing I like about it is you can start Green and Ajax. I think Green like is a starter, like or starter capability. Like he's that good enough to be a starter. And he seems like he's getting a little bit better, more comfortable the more he plays. So that would be the reason to maybe do that. But overall, I don't think it works with the makeup of the team as it is, especially with, I think you're just going to totally mess with Bobby, and now Bobby's going to suck. But that'd be maybe my biggest fear with doing that. So if you manage to trade Bobby, depending on who you get, you know, maybe it kind of makes more sense to have Chris come off the bench and kind of be that guy. And he's probably going to close like every game, I would think, you know, for the most part. But if we keep Middleton in and it's just Ajax or Green or Trent, what do you it sounds like you want Ajax because of the defense?
I mean, I do, just because I think setting the tone for the game early, especially the way that if you look at last year, which is going to be the only thing we really can compare it to with the closest team that we got killed by guards all year. And, you know, Ajax has really stepped up his defense and his, you know, comfort level with the team. Yeah, I want guys like Brunson and Halliburton to not have good games against us. Like, I really need that to happen. And I think, big tests are going to come when we're playing Boston and be like, all right, Ajax, go on Jaylen Brown and see what you can do. And it might fail, but I don't think it's going to fail spectacularly. Like, Brown's going to have a career game against him. Like, I just don't see that happening. But I don't know. I don't see the downside to doing that. And, to your point, Green's defense continues to improve. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are clearly trying to get the switch, and then Green shuts them down. They're like, oh shit, that's not really how I thought it was going to go. I think Trent has been playing better, but his defense is still Beasley-esque in the sense that it's like, I don't want to rely on his defense to win a game. I mean, I think he's better than Beasley, but I don't know. I feel like there's also something wrong with Gary Trent this year. He's getting better, but he needed to come off the bench. Like, he was. Yeah. I don't know. In a way, like, there's optimism that we can keep him in the sense that, hey, play for Doc, and Doc's going to fix your problem. Like, you're still young, but you have a problem, and you weren't going to get paid because you can't figure it out. But stick with me, and I can get it figured out over 2 seasons, and then go do whatever the hell you want to.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's something I'm seeing because he's playing better, but you put him in there for a long period of time and he starts to fall apart again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny if you're a vet and you make the minimum, like you wouldn't think you'd start, right? Like, how many,
Yeah.
why is the expectation that some guy who just got paid the minimum and he's 27 or whatever he is, like, it just seems obvious that he's like barely in the NBA in a way. You know what I mean? So that happened last year too with Beasley, and it's like, why is that happening? If it's a young guy on a rookie contract, like, so you got AJ Green, like, that makes more sense. So that's kind of a weird thing with how the NBA works sometimes. To
your point with that too, like, the Milwaukee Bucks have to be looking at guys like AJ Green and Ajax and being like, these are the guys that we're hoping to re-sign. Like,
yes,
we're not going to keep Gary Trent Jr. Like, he might be the greatest teammate, he might be awesome. He's not going to keep staying with the Bucks at a veteran minimum. Like, that's just not happening. So, to kind of what we talked about last year that you were talking to with Beasley, we don't owe you anything. Like, you're here to help out and be a part of this team, but I don't owe you shit. Like, you can be the 10th guy for all I care. Like, this is what we need you for.
Yeah. And Trent has been, at least in terms of shooting, he's been awesome the past month and a half, or however long. So he's up to like 42%, I think, 3-point shooting. So yeah, he's been better. And I totally agree with you. His defense is Beasley-esque, where it's like he is putting in effort. Like, I don't dislike him. I don't think he's bad. It just doesn't seem like he's a difference maker. And it seems like other players, like, just make baskets while he guards them. Like, it doesn't seem like it's bad defense, but he seems to give up a lot of points. While with Green, it seems like Green stays in front of guys and kind of bothers them enough where they miss more shots. It seems like Trent's not, for whatever reason, not bothering them, even though it's hard to, when I watch it, it's like, well, he's putting in a good effort. He's staying in front of them. So it is kind of a weird thing there, but yeah, I totally agree with you.
I think if you also look at the, this whole, the sight test, and you're watching Gary Trent Jr. and AJ Green, and you said, hey, casual basketball fan, which guy is competing for a huge contract? I guarantee everyone's picking Green. He looks like he's putting in the effort. He's trying to get better. I mean, that's kind of, again, like, something might be just going on with Gary Trent Jr. He's playing better, which is awesome, but maybe it was like he needed to be with a veteran coach that could be like, look, I don't owe you shit, and this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, yep. I did have a stat for Ajax that was kind of fun. Bucks have played 34 games, including the NBA Cup Championship. Actually, I think they played 1 or 2 since I looked this up. Ajax had played 19-plus minutes in half of the games. The Bucks are 11-6 when he played 19-plus, and they're 7-10 when he played less than 19 minutes. And they're 6-2 when he played 25 minutes or more. So there's a pretty good correlation of play Ajax and win games, don't play Ajax and lose games. So kind of a dumb stat that probably doesn't mean anything, but I think it does mean something.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially as we've been, sounding the horn to play him since last year. and it's finally happening.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, look, it's actually working. Who would have thought?
Yeah, and then, hey, let's start him and play him 14 minutes, like half the time. I don't totally get it. Ajax has the third best on-off differential still. AJ Green has the best on-off numbers. Yeah, so with the starting lineup, I think that was good. The other thing I wanted to... So anything else, or should I move on to Ryan Rollins?
No, we can move on. Yeah.
Okay. Ryan Rollins, I think, has been awesome. He's been like, wow, like we found this young guy who we don't have to pay a ton of money, who can play and is a good defender. You know, it's not just a Beauchamp who just wants to get out there and score. So yeah, awesome player, but he's on a 2-way contract, and we have no roster spots. And so, like, how does that work? What is a 2-way contract? I don't know. So I had to look it up. 2-way players can be active for a maximum 50 regular season games. So it's like you can't have them all season as a 2-way. And they're not eligible for the playoffs. So if it's like, hey, let's hold them and then we can play them throughout the playoffs, no, that's not a thing. So so you have to get them on your roster, legitimate, like roster 20 or 15 player roster spots, if you want to use them in the playoffs. At least I believe that's the case from what I looked up. And so the Bucks would need to open up a spot in order to sign Ryan Rollins to like an actual contract this season, which, looking at how they're playing, like I think that they would want to do that. I think we want him as a backup point guard. With the way DeLon Wright, not playing well, Doc certainly doesn't seem to like him. And that's it. Otherwise, you're kind of going to like a Chris Middleton and a Giannis, who are not really true point guards as backups. So, yeah, so I think we could. I'm pretty sure they can waive a player to open, and they probably still have to pay him, I assume. But they could waive. I would say Beauchamp is probably who they would waive, or they could trade for draft picks or cash if they're able to find someone to do that.
Yeah.
So those are the options. I think it's going to happen. Do you think that they're going to make that happen, or do you think that they might risk losing Rollins?
I think they're going to make it happen. I think, the way that they've been playing Rollins, I've seen 2-way players throughout my time watching the NBA that you just like, oh yeah, you signed this guy, like, and then I just never hear from him again. Yeah. It's like, okay, that's fine. But Ryan Rollins is seemingly playing more than any other 2-way player I can recall in recent memory. So a
couple of big names were Austin Reeves and Caruso. Okay. There was a third one that was like a current day. But those are the two guys that top of mind as to like pretty good players now.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I think kind of to jump on some of the things you said, thanks for reminding everybody that DeLon Wright is still on the team, because I don't think anybody knew that. So he can go. That's fine. Like, you were here and you tried. But Beauchamp, like, I was rooting for the guy. I love a guy that was just genuinely moved to get drafted by the Bucks and seemed like he was going to, be something. But when you come in that game against the Raptors and you score a layup and then mean mug someone on the other team, it's like, dude, like, everybody knows it's like your 11th minute of the season. Like, come on, man. Like, this is not, but, so yeah, he can go as well. But yeah, I mean, getting back to this, I would be genuinely shocked if they can't find a way to get Rollins on the active roster, and they got to be starting to move something around, whether it's draft picks or just waiving them. When you get to major sports, I've kind of said this before, that money's not real. Like, it really doesn't mean anything to anybody. So what do they give a shit if they're paying $15 million to a bunch of guys that aren't even on the team? Like, I don't think they care. So, but I mean, there's enough people out there that like, hey, yeah, let's take Beauchamp for like a second and some cash and just like see what we got. Like, look at Toronto. Like, they got 8 wins. Like, why wouldn't you take a shot and just like, I'm sure you got a shitload of draft picks that you can give out a second, and even at this point be like, all right, we'll give you $100,000. All right, great. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
The candy bar or the actual cash is fine. But yeah, I would be shocked if Rollins is not on the team for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, that would be upsetting if they don't do it. He looks pretty good. He looks like he could have a pretty decent career in the NBA, and it's like how to get rid of, especially just the team we have and the guys we have to pay. We have Dame and Giannis, making max money. You got to get these cheap guys, and you got to get young, active, fast, quick guys who, like we were talking about earlier, who can guard the perimeter and do all this stuff. So it just would be like malpractice to just let him walk. And the Bucks have let some of these guys go. I guess maybe they haven't turned into great players, but I'm thinking of like Mamu. I don't know his full name, but I always liked him, and he's a big guy. And it seemed, and I was kind of surprised that we didn't want him at the end of the roster as like a big guy backup. And it does seem dumb that we let him go. It's like I didn't fully. I think there was another guy where it's a similar situation where it's kind of like, wow, we just let that guy walk. So if we do that with Rollins, it just, at this point, it just seems really a big, huge mistake.
Well, and this might kind of transition into our next topic here, but one of the things that everybody was talking about with the Bucks last year is like, when we were getting killed by the Pacers and the Knicks, and it's like, we got a bunch of old guys, we got to get some youth on this team, and I just looked it up. Rollins is 22 years old. Ajax and Green have got to be about that too. Like, you don't let these young guys walk when you have older players. If you're going to be going with, what do we got? 3, 4, 30-plus-year-old guys that are like the heart of our team. Like, you're going to have to get some younger guys in there to bring some athleticism, to balance those contracts, that type of thing. So, which transitions me to, hopefully I'm not jumping ahead, the Jimmy Butler situation. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Butler obviously has requested a trade from Miami, which Miami says they're not, which is, standard. That's just the way it's always going to go. I think I would be more shocked if we got Jimmy Butler than if we let Rollins go, if I'm saying that correctly. Like, I just don't think it's possible that we're going to get Butler because, number one, giving Miami some of your young guys or just any of your guys is not really what the Bucks want to do. Like, the Miami Heat are always going to be kind of a hated franchise for Bucks fans. So we're not going to want to help them in any way that we possibly can. And, yes, I think if Giannis is absolutely like beating down the door to say, like, I want Jimmy Butler, me, Dame, and Butler are going to win the whole thing, blow up the rest of it. I don't care what you do. But that's not Giannis that I know. I mean, Giannis went to Disneyland with Brooke Lopez. I'm pretty sure he wants him around in some capacity. And that's what some of these trades are going to have to be, a combination of Chris, Bobby, Brooke, young guys. Like, I just don't see any of that type of stuff happening. I mean, do you have any other different belief?
Yeah, the Butler thing, when you first proposed it, I had not seen the talk, like that the Bucks were involved, because like there was a report the Bucks were talking to them, whatever. I didn't see that yet, and you had mentioned it, like, hey, we should talk about the Jimmy Butler trade, and I was like, why are we going to talk about it? Like, there's no way we're trading for Jimmy Butler. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all for either team. Like, I don't understand why we would. And then I see that there's a report and there's more and more talk about it. Like, it seems like a legit. There's at the very least, there definitely sounds like there's conversations. What exactly those conversations are, we don't know, but seemingly they were trying to make something work. And if you're going to make something work, it pretty much has to be either Dame for Butler, like straight up, or Middleton and Portis, which was actually Bobby Marks had proposed this trade today. Middleton and Portis. And then Connaughton is involved, but Connaughton goes to the Pistons, that kind of a thing. But it's basically Middleton and Portis going to the Heat, and then we're getting rid of PC. And, is there a draft pick involved there? Like, are we actually going to give up a first round 2031 pick? We only have 2 picks, 2031, first and second. It's like, are we really going to give that up for this? Which I don't even know if I'm okay with the trade just based on the people. Like, just getting Butler and getting rid of Middleton and Portis. Like, do we want that? Yeah, I'm not sure. And then we're going to throw in a pick And then we have to sign, are we going to extend Butler? He's 30, isn't he 35?
35 or 36, maybe.
Maybe 36. Yeah. Like, why we're going to extend him? He makes $50 million or, 48.8 million, the max. And I think next season he has a player option for 52 million that supposedly he's going to not take. And it's like, none of this makes sense to me. The only thing that would make sense to me is if we get Butler and do not re-sign him, so then we're clearing the books a little bit. We're getting rid of Middleton's contract. We're getting rid of Portis's contract. We're getting rid of PC's contract. I mean, so in terms of getting rid of those 3 contracts, who I'm pretty sure all have another year to them, and just eliminate that, and then who we're getting back is eliminated. Now we have a lot of money, and we have freedom to kind of do some things.
Yeah,
you're kind of giving up on the season, in my opinion, if you're doing that. So I don't like it, but I guess I can see the long term, like, we're stuck in a really tough spot right now, and this frees us up after the season. That's the only rationalization I would have. If you're actually thinking you're going to extend Jimmy Butler and you want that to happen, that is just crazy talk and like GM malpractice.
Yeah, I had the same thought you had, that if we're going to get Butler, it's going to be like, all right, we're going to push all of our chips in and hope that we can win, because the thought being, while we don't necessarily buy the narrative that Middleton is just a nonstop injury case, there's a lot of people that do believe that. And then they also don't want to pay a 6-man a lot of money. And PC's just washed as much as we like him. I mean, you watch him some of these games, just like, come on, man. Like, I don't know. So, I mean, that's the way that I would see it, too. If you do get Butler, it's because you need to save some money. And you need to have another plan. And maybe that's part of the reason why you're playing so many young guys. To say, like, wow, we could get by with Ajax and Green, and that would open a spot for Rollins. We still got Gary Trent on a cheap deal, and we got all these other pieces here that are kind of making sense. So that's what I would see too. If we're doing it, it's going to be somehow we think we can go to win it all this year, but it's going to be a money saving move in the long run. And it's one of those ones that, like, I guess I could get behind it maybe. I don't know. I think if we can't seriously compete this year, I don't know having the same team next year where everyone's a year older is going to be better. So maybe that is part of the thought process of they're thinking the same thing. If we can't seriously contend this year, like, we're going to have to blow it up anyway. And this is going to give us an out because Butler's not going to want to stay here if he can make more money, and we're not going to re-sign him, and that's just a wash.
Yeah, apparently Butler does not want to come to Milwaukee.
I didn't hear that.
So it didn't verbatim say that. It seems like that's clearly it was Memphis. He does not want to go to Memphis. I don't know why, because it's like a great spot for him to go to. Because the thing with Butler is he wants to be the alpha guy, right? He wants to be the guy who has the ball at the end of the game and all that kind of stuff. So, like, unless we're trading Dame for him, how does that work? Like, so of course, of course he doesn't want to come to Milwaukee. Like, for sure he's behind Giannis, but you could still see him maybe being the guy with the ball at the end. Giannis isn't completely that guy, but not if you have Dame and you have Chris. I guess you're going to get rid of one of those, Dame or Chris. But it's just like it doesn't make the fit doesn't make sense in terms of Butler's perspective. He wants to be the guy. If he goes to Memphis, I guess Ja Morant is that guy, but Ja Morant is like hurt half the time, and he had all those issues, and I think he's kind of taken a step back a little bit. At the very least, the media doesn't care about him anymore. But I think Butler could kind of walk in and kind of be the alpha in Memphis. So I feel, and that team's really good. And they're awesome, very well coached, and played like Jimmy Butler, like really hard. They're all dogs, all that kind of. It fits Jimmy Butler. So, and anyway, he doesn't want to go there. I don't know why. He wants to go to Phoenix, I guess, but it's almost impossible for Phoenix to get him. So it's like, okay, I don't know. It's dumb. Why are they even trading him? Like, it's just play out the season. Don't pick up your option. You could play on a bunch of different teams next year. Like, just sign a new contract then. I don't know why he has to be such a diva about it. Just play bad. You're making $49 million. Like, this is not okay for you to just not play for your team and talk about this. I don't know. And this is like the third time he's done this. Why is he it seems like he's getting a pass. Like, no one should be okay with it. He should be blackballed essentially at this point.
I think he's getting a pass because of the year he had with Miami where they went to the finals.
Yes, I think you're right.
I mean, that's it. But I really now hope that he goes to Phoenix more than anything I've ever wanted in my life, because I want them to take this team that cannot figure out how to get Booker, Durant, and Beal to play together and throw Jimmy Butler in it too. Like, I don't know how you can afford that team. I don't know how that you can't get them to play together. Like, I just want it to just kind of be like the most ridiculous clown show I've ever seen. But to your point, I mean, yeah, he's making almost $50 million and he's living in South Beach, Florida. Like, suck it up, man. Like, how bad can it? I'm like, and it's Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra. Like, I'm sorry, but like, they're two of the most respected people in the game. What is your complaint, man? And you want to go to Phoenix? Why? Because you're a big Budenholzer fan?
Why?
Like, I don't get it.
What is even the problem? I guess we know. The problem is they didn't extend him, and he takes it personally.
Yeah.
It's like, you're 35 on a max contract. Like, what? You're hurt half the time. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know what he's thinking, but in terms of being on a good team who might make the finals, the Heat are 17-17, and they made the finals when they were the 8 seed, 9, something like that. It's like, you've done this before. You've been in this spot, a worse spot, and you've brought the team to the championship. It's like, so why don't you try and do that? Isn't that what we're playing for every season? Like, what else are you playing for?
Right.
It just is like, I don't know. So, in summary, I don't want that guy on my team. I don't want to have to cheer for Jimmy Butler. Yeah. I like how he plays. I love how he plays when he's really playing. But he's just such a loser in this regard.
I agree. I mean, I think you could hope that, all right, if he did come to the Bucks, like, all right, veteran coach, you're not going to be the guy. I don't care what you say. Like, it's just not happening on this team. Like, you're always going to be second fiddle to Giannis. Maybe he's like, shit, you're right. Like, I'll just kind of ball out and try to get that big contract one more time. But I don't think Jimmy Butler is wired that way. I think you're just going to get more, like, if he comes to Milwaukee, I would bet money that he would spend more time on the bench than on the court. Probably pout. Probably have some, thing where he like leaves in the middle of a game or some bullshit that I don't know, maybe go to Portland where people hardly watch the games, and maybe you could just kind of rot up there for all I care. But like, I don't know what he wants, because again, if you want to be the man of all the teams that you could pick in the entire NBA, you pick Phoenix. Like, come
good
on.
point.
Like,
how does that make sense to either? I don't know.
Go to Toronto. Nobody's there. You're taking the ball from Dick and RJ Barrett. Like, you're fine. You'll be the man there. Like, and the whole country will root for you because they have nobody else to root for. So go there. That's where you should go.
I wonder what he thinks he's going to get in terms of pay, like a contract. Like, is he going to get? I mean, someone will pay him, but what is he going to pay? I mean, maybe he'll get $30 million a year, or I don't see him getting like a max type money.
I can't imagine. I mean, unless you get some like owner that's just like in love with him. But it's one of those things also. I mean, here we are as non-millionaires, but you kind of get to the point where it's like, well, how much money do you need? Like, I understand that this is this whole generational wealth that Jason Tatum likes to talk about on commercials, but you don't have to set up the next 50 generations with money. Like, you also take this money and invest it wisely, and your grandkids are taken care of. Like, I mean, I don't know how much more like, what do you want to do? Like, don't buy another house. Like, just chill, dude.
Yeah. And I take back what I said. Paul George is 34 and he signed through 2028 and he's getting $50 million a year. 50, 51, 54, 56 million. Paul George, who I would say is
What are you gonna say?
when he signed that contract. So last summer when he signed the contract, I'd say he's below Jimmy Butler. I would say at that right. Jimmy Butler now compared to Paul George end of last season, you're going to take Jimmy Butler over that guy. So I guess Jimmy Butler should expect that, and so I guess that's why he's mad with the Heat. But the Heat are smart to not sign that guy through the age of 38 or whatever he'll be. And I just cannot imagine the Bucks doing that. If the Bucks do that, I don't know. I will not be happy. If they sign him just for this year, I can see the long-term play and I'll be okay with that.
Yeah.
I can't be okay with paying him $50 million for the next 4 years.
No, absolutely not. And I think that's something that, like, realistically we do have to consider, because like we talked about, if the Bucks aren't serious contenders this year, I don't think another year is going to make it better. It's probably going to, make it worse. Because Brook, I think, is on the last year of his deal. You're going to have to make a decision with that. Yeah.
Please don't re-sign him.
Middleton still has some time left, and depending on, it's not that he's necessarily an injury risk, but he had to have surgeries to clear up his injuries. Mm-hmm. That's not going to get better over time regardless. I mean, you're still going to be an older guy playing with, surgically repaired ankles. Like, I don't know. Like, you're going to have this realization at some point. And so maybe
we just have one. Middleton has a player option next year. So do we think he's taking that? $34 million.
That's a tough question. I think if he stays healthy, he will decline it.
I agree. I think you're right.
That's weird. Yeah.
I think
if he gets hurt again.
Let's say he plays the rest of the season normal. He'll rest a couple games here and there, but because you and I at least think he's good. So if he has the next 40 games and he's playing really well, he probably would decline that. And if he declines that, now it's, are we signing him, or I don't know that. So but anyway, he potentially, like, we don't have to have him on the team, I guess, and that. So like, okay, you just freed up $30 million. Brooks done. Portis is going to decline his $13.5 million option. So Portis is done. And PC would probably take his $9.5 million player option.
Yeah.
So you're probably stuck with PC unless you can get rid of it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, so stuff's clearing up. It's really Dame and Giannis. Giannis, we got 3 years, Dame 2 more years, and then player options after that. So interesting. We'll see. But yeah, it's not quite as dire, I guess, when you look at it that way. If you're okay with Dame and Giannis, then it's like there's potential there. Things could happen.
Yeah, and the way that you spelled it out too, like, if you're not having Brook come back this year, and you are thinking that Chris is not going to come back at his current deal, and you're going to have to pay him more, and maybe we're just not into that, and you can throw PC in there, which we're not going to want to pay him that much money to get a rental on Jimmy Butler, it starts to make a little more sense. I mean, I wish it was almost any other player than Jimmy Butler. Not that he's like this huge, asshole, but I mean, he's not that far off.
No, he's not. He's not too far off.
Yeah.
Okay. We can move on from that. Although, no, last thing on that, I saw on Twitter someone posted a question. Bucks fans, would you make this trade? And it was the one that Bobby Marks had proposed. So Chris, Bobby, and Pat out, in for Jimmy Butler. 1,000 people had voted, and 60% said yes. So I was kind of surprised. I voted no, personally.
Yeah.
But so more than half of 1,000 Bucks fans want to do that trade. They want to get rid of Chris, Bobby, and Pat and get Jimmy Butler. Now, there was no caveat of extending Butler or not extending Butler. Like, that was an unknown. So,
well, we have friends that are Bucks fans that don't watch a lot of games, and their narrative is PC is washed, Lopez is old, and Chris is hurt all the time. So if that's the Bucks fans that are voting, like, I understand it.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. And Jimmy Butler, especially especially against the Bucks. You know what
Yep.
he's done to the Bucks in the playoffs. I think it's kind of even elevated even more, and when Bucks fans' eyes, because they're not really following him during the season typically.
Right. Right.
So, all right, we'll probably come back to trade talk in the coming weeks. I wanted to end with this. I just had a question for you. You know, All-Star games coming up, and there's All-Star voting. You know, people can vote. You can vote multiple times, apparently. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Am I letting down my team because I only place one All-Star vote, and it's like actually who I think should go to the All-Star game?
No, you're not, because fan voting is 20%. Am I saying that right?
That's a good question. I'll try to look it up as you're talking.
So yeah, as you're looking it up, like fan votes, like the fan vote is kind of ridiculous, to be honest. I mean, LeBron's always getting the second most votes, and it's like nobody in the league. LeBron doesn't think he's the second best player in the league. I mean, he's smart enough to know, like, yeah, I'm still good. I'm 40, like, but I'm not the second best player in the league. So, but he's getting the second most votes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I'm sure we could look it up. I'm sure Shaq was an all-star when he was with Cleveland and Boston and Phoenix, and it's like nobody can remember him actually playing on those games. But yeah, you want Shaq at the All-Star weekend, like that's just gonna happen.
Yeah, it's
So,
50%.
you know,
by the way, 50% of the vote for starters, the fan vote
okay,
counts as 50%.
that's a lot more than I thought.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of, they want people to be watching it.
Yeah, that's
You
probably
don't
why.
want just journalists picking it to be like, we want, AJ Green, and anyone that's not in Milwaukee is like, who is this guy? Like, this
Yeah.
is what my show is. I mean, look at even last year when it was like, like our perennial, like, garbage can that we like to kick is Obi Toppin, and Obi Toppin's brother was in like the
Yes.
dunk contest, and it's like, first of all, I barely know who Obi Toppin is, let alone to say Obi Toppin's brother is in it. Like, what are we doing here? So no, I think you got to vote for who should be on there. Now, when I vote, I typically vote once, and I just vote for the Bucks that I want to be on the team.
Don't they have it like ready for you if you click the link?
Yes.
From the box, it's like,
Yes.
yeah, AJ Green, Gary Trent Jr. It's
Yeah,
like,
and you just like
yeah.
click it. But I'm also not the demographic. I mean, I'm not the one that's voting every day. I'm not tracking when it counts triple and double. Like, I'll just throw a vote out there when I'm just like, oh, I have my phone and they said to vote, and it's like, oh yeah, I guess I could just do that real quick. It takes 2 seconds. It's preloaded with my Bucks, and there we go. So no, I don't think you're doing a disservice to the team by voting it. I don't think it's a big deal.
Okay, I did vote $2, Giannis and Dame, who I think deservedly should start.
Yes.
Last thing on the All-Star voting, just kind of interesting, especially because of the way voting's done. And I would think a lot of fans would just vote for their team's players. I was surprised at how few votes Jalen Brunson got. I mean, it's not like he had few votes, but I would have thought Brunson would have been a top 2 guard in the East. And I think he was 4th or 5th, I believe. So it's kind of surprising. I mean, New York, you got a huge fan base, and you're awesome. Like, Brunson's very good.
Yep.
And so kind of New York kind of letting him down.
Yeah, it's I think as the NBA progresses and, just major sports, I think New York and LA being these markets isn't nearly as big of a deal as it used to be honest. I mean, like, in the 80s, people didn't really even know the Bucks existed, but they were in the playoffs a lot. They had good players. They, gave teams a run for their money, but you really only heard about the Lakers and the Celtics and the Bulls. And deservedly so. They were awesome teams, but that's part of your East Coast, West Coast, and there you are. So, I mean, I think, New York is just so busy that, yeah, you could have, I don't know, 20 million people in New York City, let's just say. I bet you that 2 million know players on the Knicks. I mean, that's still a lot of people, but like, there's a lot of people that are like, I don't know who you're talking about. Like, I don't have time for that. So to expect them to be voting, I don't know. And I think like people that are living in all these other markets, their immediate thought is like, fuck New York. I'm not voting, you know. And I think that would be part of the narrative of like, screw the Knicks. I don't want to vote for the Knicks. You know, they're exciting. Like those are the games that you want to buy the tickets for and see it because you know it's going to be a good game. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I'm not voting for anyone from Boston. Like they might have great players, yeah, they do, but I'm not voting for any of them.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's got to be mostly actual NBA fans because who were the leading vote getters are Giannis was number 1, which is awesome.
Yeah,
you know, then you have like Jokic. You had like Wemby is pretty high in the voting, and San Antonio is not a huge fan base, and so it's got to be mostly people who actually care and watch NBA.
Yeah,
and yeah, probably more people voting like I do. Just actually, who do I think should start? But it's just kind of funny that you can vote, 10, 20 times or whatever it isn't just, and your team like promotes like, hey, vote for all the Bucks. I always found that kind of a funny thing.
It would be funny if some year that like, I don't know, there was like some issue where all of a sudden it was like, oh wow, the Bucks starting 5 is the starting 5 for the East. Like I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, that'd be great. Hopefully it happens.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
All right, I think that might be it. Unless do you have a flop corner or anything else for us today?
I don't have a flop corner. I appreciate everybody for sticking through us with the holiday break, but we'll come back to some consistency. We'll dive into some more NBA. NFL playoffs are here, but we get a lot of our weekdays free to watch some basketball, and so we'll have a lot more. The pod is only going to get better from here on out, I promise.
Excellent. Agreed on that. All right. We need some emails. DoubleDribbleBucks@gmail.com. Give us some questions. Subscribe and rate us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow us on Twitter or what they call X @PodDDB. Until next time, go Bucks.